a pair of shoes or whatever it is. But that pair of sneakers you wanted that has the propeller and the lights, you know what I mean? And that we would like some of that money. All of your Atlantic City money, we would like all of that. All of your cigarette money, those of you that are still smoking, we'd like that. I know that nobody in here does it, but if any of you use any other substances other than cigarettes, okay, we definitely want all of that. And so I'm going to take the basket. I know what the McIntosh family can afford. I'm not asking you to do the same thing. Because as I said before, I don't know what is a sacrifice for you. I just ask you to make the same amount of sacrifice this is for me. If everybody will do that, Clarke House will be able to pay its bills. Sister Wimberly has a basket, and she's going to come around. I'm putting in 100 for the McIntosh family. And anything, that's all right for a hand clap. That's right. If you ain't got no money, especially you got to clap because you got to contribute one way or another. Whatever it is that you have. Yes, sister. Yes, we take checks. Thank you. There's only one test we have, though. We drop it in the basket. If it bounces like out the basket, then we leave it. It's to BAPA. It's to the Board for the Education of People of African Ancestry. BEPAA. BEPAA. If you had got one of the cards, it's what BEPAA. That's BAPA. This is the headquarters for BAPA. BAPA is the organization that is giving this. Thank you, Sister Wimberly. If you want to get rid of evil spirits, if your back is hurting you, for instance, that's really, the white man keeps talking about germ theory. And I don't believe in that. I believe in evil spirits. I believe because you have the picture of the wickedest white man in the world, who was Andrew Jackson. He's on that $20 bill. I think because you have that in your pocket, that's sending out an energy that's causing your back to hurt. So get rid of it. Put it in the basket. Thank you. As I see him come down, dropping a whole handful of bills here, I'm remiss when I don't acknowledge my brother Winston Gilchrist, who has recorded this history for us, puts it on YouTube, and give him a round of applause. Brother Winston Gilchrist. My brother who got out of his sick bed, over here, Brother Yusef. He's over here recording. Give him a round of applause. More sophisticated view. I see my brother, the photographer, over here, who's standing here. We're glad to see him. Okay. Have you finished? I hope Sister Wimberly took the money out of the basket before she started passing it around. Sister Wimberly, it's not nice to tempt people, It's hard times, Yeah. If I saw some 20s in there and I was, I know nobody.
You're going to check them diplomas on your wall.
Hey, you should, brother. You should. They're bogus as they can be. I'm just so glad they let me in that graduation. Well, you know what? You're not the first person to say that you know who said I was a phony doctor, Brother Les Payne? Two people. One that I sued for $50 million. That's Jay Diamond on WABC. He did a mock assassination of me and Betty by blowing up the Daily Challenge, or like with sound on the thing. Said he was blowing, and then he said, "Well, she's still moving. Do it, hit her again." And then he made another explosion. And he said that I was a phony doctor. He says, and then he said, "This James McIntosh, he's a phony." Amos Wilson said, if you want to know the purpose of any institution in white America, take the name and reverse it, or turn it inside out or upside down. He said that if you say the justice system, that's the system to give you injustice. There is a specific tort, in other words, a specific civil complaint or suit against slandering or libeling a physician and a surgeon. I assure you, that's what now if you let me do surgery on you, you really need the specialty I'm in. I'm in psychiatry. But my license says, licensed to practice medicine and surgery in the state of New York. And so he did that. He libeled me. He slandered me. He said I had a phony MD. And it was such a crazy injustice that it was published in the New York Law Journal. Courts say it's okay to call doctor phony MD. See, they changed the rules as they go. The other person who said that I was a phony MD was Dicker, the guy from Fred Dicker from the New York Post. He didn't write it. He didn't write it. He said it. I'll tell you that story. You can't stop me, brother. I got a lot of stories. I'm gonna tell you the story. When Professor Clarke, Dr. Jeffries, who's a member of our board, was in, he was in Africa, I believe, but he was out of the country, and they did this attack on Dr. Jeffries 2 weeks after he had given a speech. And in the speech, it was a relatively innocuous sentence about the connection between Russian Jews and their operation in Hollywood and organized crime, And so they pumped it up like he had, like he was Goebbels or somebody, and he was out of the country, and so we were sitting here as we try to do a counter propaganda attack. We said, what would they do, in such a time? So the first thing we did was contacted James Small. Said, James, I got to get a quote from Dr. Jeffries. So I don't believe James talked to Dr. Jeffries. I think he made it up. He did what he was supposed to do. He made up one. He said, Dr. Jeffries said, I stand on truth. Daily Challenge headline. I stand on truth, said Dr. J. That's what you're supposed to do. That's what he's supposed to do. So he said, I stand on truth, said Dr. Jeffries, and that was one story. Then we got different groups. Bob Law, this one, that one, put another story in the Daily Challenge. The black leaders said, okay, but then by this time, they're still attacking. I said, what would they do? What would they do? I really was thinking. And I said, like if they attack a black person, they say something racist, a white icon says something racist, the first thing they do is they go get another black person to say, well, I know him, he's not a racist, he's a nice guy, he's this, that, and the other. So at that time I was, I'm not an immediate past president, but at that time I was like an immediate past president probably of the nation's largest union of salaried physicians called the Committee of Interns and Residents. It represents all the interns and residents in New York City and used to be at the Health and Hospitals Corporation, also the League of Voluntary Hospitals, and also the University of Medicine Dentistry of New Jersey. So obviously they're, like Dr. Jeffrey said, he used to be the head of a Jewish fraternity. I was the head of a Jewish union, right? So I call people, friends, and call them to see if they would say something for Dr. Jeffries. I got cursed out more that day than ever in my life. But eventually I remembered that I heard Dr. J on the radio when they used to do the WLIB Keeley presentation. They would, the thing where, on either Columbus Day or Thanksgiving Day, they call it Holocaust Day, and they would have indigenous Americans talk about it. And on that day, he was on the program with a guy who had written a book called Black Indians. And Dr. J said to him, he said, Brother Katz, something. I know it, like bang, it just, I said, Brother Katz. I said, Brother Katz, that's got to be somebody. So I called, that was from William Loren Katz, but I don't have any way to get in touch with him. So I picked up the phone book, I looked, I go through the phone book, W.L. Katz, down in the village. I said, yeah, that's probably where he would live. Took the phone, I called him. The man it was like he was waiting for somebody to call. He said, this thing that they're doing to Dr. Jeffries, he says, it's not about the statement that he made. It's about the anguish, he said, that they feel around the curriculum of inclusion. He talked about his own efforts to change the curriculum and include the things that are pertinent to African people. He talked about the fact, and this was just, again, serendipitous, just like, I just knew he was a Jew. I don't know the distinctions between Jews. He said, I'm a Russian Jew. Oh, man, I saw my headline already, right?
Yeah.
Russian Jew. He says, and he went through this whole thing, and he talked about Dr. Jeffries in a pleasant way. My headline was what? You know the headline. Russian Jew supports Dr. Jeffries and his, okay? So, I'm no writer. That's another story. I was retired from writing. When I was young, I wanted to be a writer. My wife would go work, I would stay at home, and I would write. And then one day I had the misfortune of seeing Toni Morrison on TV. And Toni Morrison read this passage, and when I heard that passage, I felt like those kids in Roots. Where he said, remember when we were wrestling this morning? And the master wrestler said, we weren't wrestling. I was wrestling. You were learning wrestling. When I saw it to her, Toni Morrison, and she finished, I said, I'm not right now. When I got a job, I worked ever since. I never, okay? But even though I'm not a writer in that sense, like I had this, I followed a principle that I heard from somebody else at that time. They said, if you want your work out there, they said, put it in the black press. They said the black press will print your story verbatim, no matter what they said, even the typos. Right? That's a terrible thing. That's what somebody said. And so I had already started writing stories for the Daily Challenge, but sometimes to get them in these other papers, I would have to call and try to get something and never could get it. This time they called me. I also got a sense of the amount of infiltration and spying on us, because there ain't this much coincidence in the world. On the day, my story, I faxed it into the Daily Challenge that night. I told you what the headline, Russian Jew supports Jeffries and his views. In the morning I looked, and the white papers got the same headline, Jewish professor supports Dr. Jeffries. It was a counter propaganda move. They weren't talking about William Loren Katz. They were talking about Dr. Levy, the guy, the racist up there at City College. See, that's to change the conversation. That's to keep the conversation, Dr. Jeffries is a racist. That's what that purpose was. But this one was the headline. The headline, Russian Jew, blah, blah, blah. It had William Loren Katz's picture on the front. And the Amsterdam called me for the first time and asked me could they run. I said, yeah, you can run it. By the next day, I'm getting a call from the guy from, he was with Maurice Bishop in Grenada. What's his name? Don Rojas. Don Rojas at that time was the editor. He called me. He said, James. He said, no, I don't want to do this. But he told me about an official at the Amsterdam that had been called and was frightened to death because Fred Dicker told him that I was not a real doctor and that William Loren Katz was not really a scholar in residence at NYU, like I had said in the article. So I started to explain. I said, no, Don, he said, no, forget it. He said, look, I checked it. He said, the man is everything you said and more. He said, you had, and the numbers off the top of the head, he said, you had that he had edited 137 books. It was 237 books, you know what I mean? So he told me that, he said, but they had called it and said that I was not a doctor and that William Loren Katz was not a scholar. Well, this one here broke my heart too, and I'm going to finish. I'm sorry. These things trigger. This is called free association. The Amsterdam put an article out talking about what Fred Dicker had done, and that they had checked, and what they did was they rehabilitated William Loren Katz's reputation. They didn't mention me. It's all right to call me a phony MD. Like I told you before, I've been called a phony MD before, so that's in response to you, brother, by checking my credentials, okay? But as I said before, but we, I guess the last part of that is the biggest compliment that Brother D, the biggest artist, because this brother is an artist in the truest sense of the word, a revolutionary artist. When we went to the hangar where Dr. J's plane was supposed to come in, the campaign, from the Amsterdam, the Challenge, and everybody had gotten to where there were at least 1,000 people, but the hangar was such that it shook when the people moved. Having done this for a little while, when 13 members of the JDL came with a lynched black man, they would say hanging him in effigy. I call it a lynched black man, right? And they didn't even know what Kenty was, so they had some little different color cloth around. This was supposed to be Dr. J. They had cloth around, and they were shaking it. And brothers were really ready to take them out. People like, Professor Small and others, kept everybody, together. I knew what the headline would be. The headline was going to be JDL demonstrates at the airport. We got 1,000 people, they got 13, it's going to be JD. But what made my day was when as they held that thing in effigy, about 3 people took that daily challenge with that picture of William Loren Katz that said, William Loren Katz, you know, a Russian scholar supports, and they put it up in their faces. They fought them with that. You can't do any more than that. If you are an artist and you can create a weapon for your people, that's it. This is as good as it gets. So with all that out the way, now we're going to have questions and answers. I'll ask Brother Sales and Sister Ilyasa and Brother Les Payne and Brother James, if you'll come up to the podium, and if people have questions for you, you know, have questions that you feel you want to answer, only if you feel you want to answer them, then answer them, okay? Thank you very much.
You know, somebody mentioned the significance of the 19th. Of course, that's Malcolm's birthday, but it's also the birthday of Jimmy Kochiyama, who was a very close friend and mentor and associate of Malcolm. A Nisai, Japanese-American woman who had been interned in World War II, who went on to international fame. She was born on the 19th of May. And in addition, the 19th of May is the birthday of Ho Chi Minh, father of the independence struggle in Vietnam. Yes.
Good evening.
Step into the light, please.
I am a person who was born in Harlem. I consider myself a 3-generation black conscious nationalist person. My uncle came from Jamaica. He was a follower of Marcus Garvey. My mother, who was raised by him, went to Hunter College and gave Malcolm his first experience of mainstreaming, because they invited Malcolm before to speak at Hunter College before the Hate Produced came out. That was way back in the 50s. And I would say our youth was the first organization that I was a part of, called NYSA, or National African Youth Student Alliance. Held in 1987, the rally on, which is now Malcom X Boulevard, at 116th Street, right across from Malcolm X Shabazz Mosque. There's 2 things I want to ask. One is Malcolm's ties with the underworld. That you said a lot of things that he related to lower class, the underworld, the hustler, and is that reflected in the fact that, which I found out recently on YouTube, that a certain hustler at the time of his death paid for his funeral. His hustler's name was Bumpy Johnson.
Yeah.
And that the second thing is that, which is, said Malcolm's ability to take the stance on issues before other leaders did. One issue that I found out reading about several books is the issue at the past Vietnam War, was that Malcolm took a stand on Vietnam way before Dr. King ever did.
2 things. One, I think it's important to understand that Malcolm's constituency included people that are generally categorized as criminals. But one very important point Malcolm always made was that, in a sense, we were all considered criminals by the society. That we were all in prison, you know? And he wasn't going to repudiate somebody based on a definition and a condition that was imposed by white supremacy. All right? And the second thing is that as a victim of the system, right? He was denied an education, denied a livelihood, forced into the world that exists between legitimate and illegitimate activity. And then as a very young man, because he had a gang that included a white woman, right?
Right.
When he was arrested on a relatively small, burglary charge,
Yeah.
they threw the book at him, gave him
That's
8 to
right.
15 years. You see? So Malcolm knew, the experiences of people who generally were outside of what was considered to be legitimate society by middle class leadership. And it was because of that he was able to say, look at me, right? I was part of the group that nobody wanted to give any respect to, that nobody wanted to listen to, that nobody wanted to recognize I had leadership, right? I was just like you. I experienced what you've experienced, and you can develop yourself, you can change, and you can become your own liberator, all right? And I think that's very important today because more and more of our kids are in the situation Malcolm found himself in, right? And so that when, I started with the whole thing about calling our kids thugs, right? Because the condition that they were reduced to, if you look at the specifics of the stuff that really went down in Baltimore, right? It was as usual, the police initiated all that stuff, right? And that you have to understand that if our people are going to struggle, the first people you're going to see are going to look like the people who are defined as hoodlums and gangsters and all those other opprobrious names that they impose upon us. So that's why Malcolm's important. We need to see those kids as potential Malcolms.
Bill, can I say something to that? Every time I'm with Brother Peter Bailey and other people, they talk about Malcolm as being a master teacher. And he was a master teacher. But for me, one of the important and significant things about Malcolm is that he represents legitimate, authentic African deep thought. The critical analysis. Dr. Clarke once told me in my car that when Malcolm said something, you understood it the first time. You didn't have to think about it anymore.
Make it plain.
He spoke. That's it. He made it plain. Legitimate African deep thought, and that is something for me, and I'm sure for many people in here, that is missing nowadays on all levels. Legitimate African deep thought. When you hear it, it sticks, it stays with you, and it has a transformative quality to it. And so again, I believe, and I think this is why I talk about Malcolm in my classrooms. I bring Bill out and James Smalls and everybody else who can talk about him besides myself. I think that one of the things that we need to do, and I do at Kane University, I do at Medgar Evers College, or any place that I'm at, when I go into the prisons in Jersey and so on, I think that we need to, once again, bring Malcolm to the fore, because many of our young people don't know who Malcolm is. In the classrooms quite often, and I'm amazed, Les, when I hear this, and I know you've heard it before, Malcolm the 10th. I'm amazed. And so again, Malcolm's transformative quality in terms of African deep thought and the ability that he had to speak directly to you. That's why I couldn't leave when I was on 25th Street. I didn't know what he was talking about, but I knew it was something that I had to hear. And so again, going to what Bill said, I think this is an important thing that we have to recognize in Malcolm, and we have to make sure that our young people know about Malcolm, not Malcolm the 10th, that they know about Malcolm, and that we begin to do some transformative stuff. Because again, I'm having problems just explaining to our people why they shouldn't use the N-word, much less anything else. Which many people think is something that, that is cool and is hip, and it doesn't mean that. Well, it does mean that under conditions of white supremacy. If you haven't changed the condition of white supremacy, as long as that exists, that word is going to have that meaning. And it's like I tell certain people, that's like they say nigger, I said a nigger. That's like having two different musical notes with the same sound. The vibration is the same.
You had a second part to your question?
It was about Malcolm's stance on Vietnam. It was
Oh,
before
yeah.
Dr. King.
Now, it's important to understand that Malcolm was not only a leader of our people, but he reflected a whole lot of progressive trends that originated in different components of our struggle. Malcolm certainly took a very early position against Vietnam, but the credit for the early position has to go to SNCC.
Yes.
All right? To the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. Not only because they took the position early, but one of the reasons they had to take a position because their cadre were being drafted. You see? And so they had to take a position, and because of Malcolm's interaction with the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, and through a person, Muhammad Ahmed, not Stanford, some people may know, was Malcolm's liaison with SNCC. All right, so Malcolm was exposed to the Vietnam issue. In addition, we have to recognize that Harlem had a whole lot to do with creating this person we know of as Malcolm X. All right, the Harlem intelligentsia. When you talk about Dr. Clarke, he's just one of a number of people who were circulating at the time. Some of them were erudite like Dr. Clarke. Some of them were street corner intellectuals like Pork Chop Davis and what have you, right? But Malcolm would debate with them. He argued, he disagreed. They teach him. They say, come on, we got no Africa fair here. We want you to come and check it out. At some point they said, you need to go to Africa and find out what's going on. They taught him, they mentored him, all right? He was mentored within his own family. His parents were Garveyites, but what most people don't know, the main Garveyite in his family was his mother, all right? Was recording secretary for all of the chapters of the UNIA, Garvey's organization in the Midwest. She would send back reports, all right, to the headquarters here, which is not, not many blocks. It gets down that way initially. And one scholar named Vincent, he actually, discovered boxes of these reports and it's written on them. Theodore Vincent is a scholar I'm thinking about. So very early on, Malcolm was tutored. In fact, Ella Collins told me that his parents would take him to UNI meetings. He'd be on his mother's lap. His father would be conducting a meeting. So he had a very early experience. And you can't discount his experience in the Nation of Islam. Right? Many of us think of that as a purely religious, non-Christian phenomenon. But there's a very deep relationship between the tradition of black nationalism in the United States, the development of the Pentecostal church among black people, all right, and the Nation of Islam. So the Nation of Islam is black religious nationalism, right? And so a whole lot of the themes in black nationalism Malcolm, was exposed to within the Nation of Islam, as well as his family, as well as the political culture of Harlem. So when Ossie Davis, eulogized and said, our great shining prince, yeah, we, in a sense, made Malcolm, right? And we have to, he's the best of us. We have to take credit for that, And if we made him, we can make him again. And we can make him again. And we can make him again. We can make 1,000 of them, 50,000 of them, 1 million of them. Before I'll repeat the question, but just let me say that when I was doing my doctoral work on Malcolm X and Afro-American unity, I had cause to spend a number of days and hours with Betty Shabazz, all right? And one thing that always struck me at that time was that of all the daughters, I always saw Iyasa next to her mother, all right? Almost like on the right hand, you know what I mean? And that she really was the epitome of a good kid and a good daughter. And it stuck with me to this time. When I see her, even in my mind's eye now, I see her at the right hand of Betty. I just wanted to mention that. Now, you asked me again, repeat it.
What the children, what these young people who are protesting extracurricular police activities in
Yeah.
their neighborhoods, how would they be directed by the legacy of Brother Malcolm, or if he was still alive, and what would he advise them to do?
Let me start by saying what he wouldn't advise them to do. He wouldn't advise them to be cool and be nonviolent. All right? He would repeat a slogan that was very common in China during the leadership of Mao Zedong, especially at the point when they had the great proletarian cultural revolution, if I can go that way. Slogan was simply, it is right to rebel. Right? If you're oppressed, right, you have a right to resist, to rebel. If the police are killing you, you have a right to do whatever's necessary to deal with them. However old or young you are. That's right. Now, you may not choose to exercise that in given circumstances. You may assume, well, it's too dangerous. You know, the consequences at this point might not be right. But you cannot say you don't have the right to do it or you're limited in what you can do. Right? So, I think Malcolm would say that. Malcolm didn't say things that were politic, right? That were nice, that everybody would agree with, right? He tried to call it like it was. He tried to tell it like it was and let the chips fall where they may.
Yes, sir.
We don't see that among people who claim to be leaders today. But we certainly do see it among the youth, right? Black Lives Matter, and we see it among those youth who may not be in an organizational format yet, but are making a statement. You can't shoot me in the back without me doing something to you. As elders, we need to endorse that, all right? We need to help people to be able to do that and survive the repercussions.
Yes, sir.
In other words, we have to foster that because that is a revolutionary force. And you know the interesting thing? Can you tell lightning not to strike? You know what I mean? You can't tell lightning not to strike. You can't tell the rain not to fall. Right? And you can't keep beating up on the people and murdering them and shooting them down without them responding.
Yes, sir.
It just does not accord with history. I defy anybody to demonstrate to me, right, that you can do this to people forever and they won't respond. Fanon said, you know, if you don't respond, you're being dehumanized, right? The minute you say, no, if you do this to me, I'll retaliate, I'll jack you up. That's when you become a human. That's what humans do. At least I think that's what happens.
Thank you, Bill.
Thank you.
I heard something on television by the mayor of Baltimore, and was the district attorney that said, she said something that didn't conform to what Malcolm taught. She said, no matter how tragic the situation is, we should not raise our voices in anger. That's what she said on television. The mayor, the black mayor, or the black district prosecutor. Well, anyway, now I
Well, you know, look,
see. So what do you think about that? I mean, and then Kwame Ture, when he was alive,
yeah.
he said the more black faces that we see in politics, the more invisible black people become. That's what Kwame Ture taught. And that's true. That's
Sure.
very true.
It sure is. Well, see, you know, what's interesting is that we have what you might call a dialectic at work, right? On the one hand, we struggle for effective political power, right? Mm-hmm. Those who are opposed to us give us what? Semi leadership, right? So it's not like we're struggling to put people in power that are going to say these things, right? But when the deal goes down, the kind of people who achieve power, and of course there are many notable exceptions. I don't want to damn everybody with this, but there are many notable exceptions. As a rule, right, all kind of forces mold the situation in such a way that what you get, right, is a leadership that doesn't really represent or say to you what you need to hear. What that may suggest to us is that our struggle has to take place not only in the electoral political arena, but in some other arenas. And we begin to need to see what happens in the street as important a part of politics as what happens in the voting booth, and maybe more so. Oh.
Well, I
You step into the light, please.
the radical talk for decades,
Can we get them to come out to the light?
Got this somebody video.
But I think what
He's
people
staying
need
on the
to
way
do,
to the video.
the people in Boston, they need to be there doing things for those children so they're not out there riding and setting themselves up to be killed, put in jail, et cetera, et cetera. They allow their schools to be, actually not serve the needs of their children. And the black people in the black community are not powerless, helpless, and resourceful less. Because I worked in the Harlem schools, and I know how difficult it was to get real involvement of families with their own children. So, and the community. So it's one thing to talk that rebel-rousing talk. But what are we doing to actually help children, work with children, guide them so they don't end up in jail or don't end up shot by a policeman's bullet?
Can you get them to come
And
out?
I was not happy to see those silly kids going in and out of that drugstore, burning down that senior center, and that was maybe 200 of them altogether.
There were white folks in
What
there,
about
too.
all of the
Can you
black
come out
people
front?
who were demonstrating? The media, of course, always plays against us. They show up the rebel rousers and they downplay the people who are probably doing something positive. I understand their anger, but they should be angry at the adults who don't look after them also.
Okay, I'm glad that you asked that question. This society is not creating enough jobs to provide a decent standard of living for a larger and larger percentage of black families. This is a structural thing. As long as the society is organized the way it is, this will not only continue to happen, it will increase, all right? So the things that provide for secure families are increasingly being undermined in our community. It means it's harder and harder.
I'm aware of that.
No, but wait. I'm trying to develop this. All right? So right away, the ability of parents to do what's necessary, right, gets eroded. Long-term unemployment is demoralizing. All right? What people might be able to do, they can't as easily mobilize psychological resources to do it. Then there's more. All right? Large numbers of young people are arrested and incarcerated, not because they've broken the law, but simply because they're black and young folks and there ain't a job for them. And therefore, we know that when you have young people, they ain't got no job, they don't have any respect, they'll be socially disruptive. So we have what? The school to prison pipeline. All right? Then another factor is that this society stagnates economically unless it can find new profit sources. All right? So some real big multi-billionaires have discovered that there's all kind of profit to be made by privatizing public education. All right?
In prison.
Now, the privatized public education.
I wasn't generalizing.
Oh, you gotta let him answer, sis. Sis, you gotta let him answer. You gotta let him answer. You have to.
Oh, I'm gonna answer your
Bro, wait a second. Brothers and sisters, these people that are here are our guests. Hold on. The people that are here are our guests who have a certain expertise. That's why we asked them here to speak. Not quite trying to limit your conversation, but you got to give them the courtesy of letting them answer. Now, after they answer, we're very loose here. You can say something now, but you got to let them finish his answer.
Ask her to step out in front so we can see who she is.
Okay. Let me try to be briefer. You know, all I'm saying is that there's structural reasons why you see our people behaving the way they do.
Absolutely.
And you're telling me to understand that we agree with that. All right? We also need to exhort each other more. And that's what you're saying. We need to place greater demands on each other. Ask people to be better parents, right? Ask our people in the schools to do a better job, etc. However, if we only do that, and we don't create a movement, right, that in some way is pushing back against those forces that are locking us into a structure of victimization, dependency, and genocidal destruction, right? We will never be successful. It'll be like Sisyphus pushing that stone, you know, the thing, and then it gets big and comes rolling back down. Now, I can tell you as a parent, I've had 5 children. You can't imagine, and some have been relatively privileged, how some of them will act stupid, you know what I mean, end up in a police state, you know, because we have a society that promotes stupidity among our kids. Right? If you're in a medium, what have you, right? So even when you're in a relatively good position to bring them up, it's a struggle. Then you got folks inside the system, these gatekeeping jive time folk, who, if your kid shows any promise, they mess with them, they give them low marks, they don't tell them what colleges they can go to, and all that kind of stuff. Then when you go to step to them, here come what? The police. Is this not true?
Yes.
The police enforce this organization in our community. Because when we mobilize to move against these people, here come the police. All right? Now, I don't mean but this is a whole lifetime of this stuff, and many of us know. You know what I mean? A lifetime of running up against this stuff. You know what I mean? And you're looking for support among the police, and what they're really doing is trying to destroy you. And I'm not talking about just white cops. It's the majority of them put on the blue. It's a whole thing. You know, cops are blue. That's what color they are.
Yep.
You know what I mean? And so I think that I'm not trying to say we should not try to do a better job, right? But the better job we need to do is rebuild this movement for black liberation, you know what I mean? And start neutralizing and nullifying this police terror and all this other okie doke that's really making it impossible for us to gain control of our own kids and protect them.
Let sister say what she wants to say, and then
I'm just going to bring it back to my point. And I was talking about Baltimore.
Yeah.
I have relatives there. I have a 14-year-old grandson who's ninth grade year. He wrote a poem about this. I'm talking about those particular kids, the people in Baltimore. There are a lot of middle-class, educated black people in Baltimore. I'm saying, and even I'm in the Harlem community. I've lived here for 30 years. I worked in the school for 15 years. We are not mobilizing and putting our talents and mind and strengths together. We do a lot of talking about what the larger community does against us, but I'm saying, wait a minute, we stop and look at what we're doing and join together and do what we can do for ourselves. And those kids in Baltimore need someone not to just condemn them and talk about the racist system and then move on. Who's gonna help them? That mother who slapped her child up, someone told me she got arrested and her children were taken away from her. I don't know if that's true. But my thought when I saw her, someone should raise money for her. I'll send her some money.
Right.
I need to hold things up for a second to say this. I noticed that people are leaving. We're only going to go for another 5 minutes, but Sister Ilyasa has some books upstairs. So I don't know if she wants to move up to her position where her books are, and then as soon as anybody that has to leave, you're going up there first, and then when we finish this, everybody's going to go up and let's at least look at her books and buy some, okay? Is that possible? Is that all right, everybody? Can I get an amen?
I have some books here too.
And Brother Bill Sales also has some books, so we want to support them. Let's keep our questions short. Let's just have the last 3 questions and then.
Can I speak to that?
Yes, but short, but brief, brother.
I'm gonna try. I agree with everything that Bill said. Part of what, to me, compounds our problems and everything that we do is the problem of consciousness. Du Bois talked about in Souls of Black Folks, the double consciousness. Amos Wilson wrote a book called The Falsification of African Consciousness, Black on Black Crime, and a whole bunch of other books. It's difficult to organize, and it's difficult to teach young people things that you don't know. Very difficult to do that. And so in all of this that's going on, and there are people who do what you are suggesting that we should be doing, we simply don't have enough of them. Part of the reason we don't have enough of them because we don't have enough people with consciousness of themselves, consciousness of the system, consciousness of who we are. And also, that's the importance of Malcolm. That's why we're here today. That's one of the things that Malcolm inspired critical analysis. But in order to do critical analysis, you got to spend some time doing some studying, some reading, and organizing. Okay? And one of the things that, again, you hear quite often everywhere is that black folks don't read nothing. Generally, we're apolitical, ahistorical. I mean, how else could all of these young black folks be out there, going back to the point that I made, calling themselves the N-word and thinking it's cool? To me, you would think that a conscious and healthy black person wouldn't want to use the word even if they thought it was okay out of respect to their ancestors who didn't like it.
That's right.
So what we're talking here is another issue of consciousness. Everything Bill said was correct and what you said, but we're talking about something else here that's going on that we have to work on. Seriously, we got huge numbers of our people who are being educated by the system, being taught to think, speak, and act according to the guidelines set down by Europeans.
Right.
All right?
Right.
So, I'm finished.
Right.
That everybody said was very thought provocative, and I think it's very instructive to us and for us as we begin to move on. I just wanted to just add or piggyback on some of the things that was just said. One of the things that I think that Malcolm would have instructed us to do is to actually organize. He made sure that even when he left the Nation of Islam, that he formed the Muslim Mosque Incorporated, and then he also formed the Organization of African Unity. He understood the necessity, although he was an eloquent and charismatic speaker, he understood that you needed an organization. So I think the challenge for all of us is to begin to look at how can we begin to organize so that we are disciplined in being able to combat some of the issues that we say that we are confronted with, such as police brutality. Organization, organization, organization. One of the thematics that Kwame Ture constantly said, we have so many organizations, but we lack participation in those organizations. So I think that becomes one of our critical tasks is to just to organize. So I just wanted to say that. One final thing. One of the things Malcolm said I thought is instructive to anyone who's in quote-unquote leadership position. He said one of his best credentials was his sincerity. It wasn't how good he spoke. It wasn't how, sincerity is synonymous with being committed, but he talked about sincerity. So I think that speaks in terms of us not being opportunistic, but really having legitimate needs and aspirations of the people at heart and being sincere about that. That's
all. First and foremost, I'd like to honor Malcom X, and I would say that my birthday is May 18th. And I also have another connection with Malcolm is that unfortunately I was incarcerated for 25 years for a crime I didn't do. But so I understand the study and I understand Malcolm because I am Malcolm. And the connection I also have with Malcolm is I learned about Malcolm in a prison reading his book. I didn't learn about Malcolm in school. My peers didn't know about Malcolm. I'm 48 years old. So I know the children up under me is like, it's like they don't have a chance of knowing about let's do Spike Lee's movies. But also I want to get to the point and say that that liberation is mental, physical, and spiritual. And it first must take place within inside the people before it's manifested outside the people. A lot of times we have external people. We have to become internal in order to get this liberation that we so seek. I got my liberation. I hope I'll share it with you. And I hope that we come together and create the liberation in our physical environment and do a little less talking and a little more introspection. Because we have our answers. We have our answers. But we just have to find them within. Thank you.
Amen. Was there another question? Okay. That's it.
She has one.
Okay, I thought she did. Okay, come on. All right.
Step out in front.
Oh, more or less, I was also just thinking of what the sister said. It is the media's job to portray us. It's also a part of genocide to do what they're doing. Now, you mentioned the CBS. There was a video of that same CBS with more than 15 white folks tearing up the store. And as when we have things, they will have people to come in to instigate things and people will follow. You understand? So, and also, anytime that they have these football games and so forth, when they turn over and burn cars, I don't see the police calls
Absolutely.
and so forth.
Absolutely.
So
I
right,
understand all
okay.
that.
I just wanted to end on something a little that I think we needed to hear after that. We did not struggle to keep our minds from being shackled, only to have you turn away from learning the wise ways of the elders. We did not endure bondage for you to become a slave to drugs and alcohol. We did not die by the millions for you to kill one another by the thousands. We did not ward off their insults and our claims of our inferiority for you to hate yourselves. We did not become their human commodity, their black ivory, their black gold, for you to put material things over your children, your people, and your own families. We withstood their slaughterhouse, slave ships, their seasonings, and break-ins, for you to walk away in unity and live in dignity. We must always understand someone is not going to tell you that they intend to harm and kill you. That is their constant job. And the number one thing they do that with, I believe, is the television and the music. So if we can, you control what happens in your home. You also can, just as you visit a nursing home, you can visit the school closest to you, because you're supposed to reach out and touch something and someone.
Oh, can I say this? Can I say this? The best DVD about Malcom X and his life is called Make It Plain.
Yeah.
That's the best one.
Thank you,
You
brother.
can learn everything.
Brothers and sisters, we've had a full afternoon of education, have we not? Okay, entertainment. What I want to ask now, a lot of times we have people who say, less talking, more of this, and we knew, but you know what?
See if I can make it there.
There are requirements on us to do something. I remember one time Barack had a, it's like, what did you do this week for black people? I'm not talking about you calling to a radio station. I'm not talking about you came to our forum and you told us what we ought to do, and you told Brother Bill what he ought to do. I mean, what did you do this week to back up those things that you believe? Did you work with some black youth? Did you try? I know that with Brother Bill, I didn't have any disagreement with what he said Malcolm was saying under those circumstances, but I do believe he would want them to be prepared. Prepared. Because I can see the way that he operated. He operated the same way that he learned in the Nation of Islam. There's reasons those kids weren't killed with them throwing those rocks. And it doesn't fit lockstep into some people's point of view, but it's very clear somebody had said something to those police. Because if they hadn't said something to those police, they would have shot those young people down. They would have shot them down. But that's not where our salvation lies, and having people inside who tell people. That's not what I'm saying. I agree with them 100%. You got to be alive. You got to express anger when people do something to you. When people kill you, people kill your family. So we had good teaching here today, but I want everybody. One thing I want you to do. When I said, "What have you done this week?" Go up. You love Brother Malcolm? Go support his daughter upstairs, who endured something that you just can't even imagine what it would be like. Most of us can't even imagine what it would be like.
Mm-hmm.
All right? So go up. If you can, buy a book from her. If you ain't got enough for one book, two of you get together and buy a book from her. Okay? Do that. We want you to come back next week to hear about Patrice Lumumba. Don't just come for the ones that have a charismatic value for you. Come back, because all of these leaders, these are people, the first ones we're doing are people who you can't get away. They gave their life. Medgar Evers, whatever you might think about his approach, I hate seeing him dismissed because of, what he thought freedom represented. Because you said, well, that was an integration, I'm not into that. But he was trying to do something for our people, and he gave his life for it. You can't do any more than that. So you need to come. Maybe there was something he had wrong, but there was a whole lot he had right. Medgar Evers had a whole lot right. And the same thing, Patrice Lumumba, it's going to be a whole lot. Malcolm had that was right, Maybe somebody has some disagreement and say, well, this was wrong, but you learned something today, didn't you? I'm a little disjointed. You have to forgive me, brother, since I ate a little sugar just now. But bottom line is, though, that...
You're doing a great job.
Thank you, brother. We had... the Creator blessed us. Less pain. Dr. Kindness. Sister Elias. Brother Bill. And the good thing is it's not over. Bill's going to be here probably when we do Patrice Lumumba. He was here when we talked about the police and added valuable, input to it. Keep coming back. This is the lowest level of organization, to sit on your butt and to listen to some people. We want it. I'm not putting you down. I want you to come. Come sit on your butt. Come hear the people. And then something may happen in you to say, you know what? I'm going to help them serve the food downstairs. I'm going to come here and help clean up one day. I'm going to come when they do their program on math enrichment. I know a little bit of math because we've done that. Free courses on math enrichment right here. Then I'm going to come and do it. But this is the lowest level of organization. We want you to at least come and do that. Come sit on your butt. Come hear what's happening. And wait until that energy hits you to move and do a little bit more. Thank our speakers again. Please give them a round of applause. Buy a book. Buy a book. Yes, sister.